Isaiah 7:14. Therefore the Lord himself will give you a sign. Behold, a virgin will be with child and bear a son, and she will call his name Emmanuel. John 14:27. Peace I leave with you. My peace I give to you, not as the world gives do I give to you. Do not let your heart be troubled, nor let it be fearful. Well, I am so excited to welcome back my friend Leeann Reynolds to the podcast. Hi, Leeann.
Hello. I'm back.
You're back. Leeann was actually on a couple episodes ago, on episode 82, where we had our family Advent fun episode, and we reviewed, like 10 or 12 different resources for helping your family observe Advent. Families of different sizes, different ages, different kinds of preparation. Some of them had a lot of prep, and some of them were like, hey, open the book and read. Right. And
Exactly.
So Leeann and I did that together. And then I asked her to come back on and to talk with us about week 2, the candle for week 2, which represents peace. But before we get there, for those people that maybe haven't heard episode 82. And if you haven't listened to that yet, listeners, please go back and check that episode out. You can also find a full list of all those resources on a blog post on the website, journeyofruth.com. But before we move on, Leeann, for those who haven't listened to episode 82, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So I'm good friends with Courtney. We've known each other for a long time.
Yeah.
She's been an encouragement to me. And so I'm really happy to be on here again. But for me, I am a stay-at-home mom. Currently, I have 3 kids, and I do a lot of just side work with my husband. He's a dreamer. He's an entrepreneur. And so I'm kind of his administrative assistant. I kind of fill in and do all of the legwork and different things he needs to have different things go with his side business. And so that's currently what I'm doing. In the past, I have done social work. I've done behavioral health. I've worked with other families, and I love to teach. That's really my platform. So I teach one-on-one. I teach in small groups. I teach large groups, just life skills and discipleship, which we've talked about here a lot too.
Yeah.
So that's who I am in a nutshell.
So Leeann and I have known each other since before we were married, and then we met our husbands, and dated at the same time. And then we actually got engaged a week apart. From each other. And so when she says she's known me for a long time, we've gone through a lot of things together. We started
several
meeting,
life stages.
I know. We started meeting for Bible study together when we had 2 kids. Like we would get together on a weekday morning, and there were 2 kids. And that was like no problem, some toys on the ground. Then it increased to where we had 5 kids. Under the age of...
Between the 2 of us. Yep.
Yeah, between the 2 of us. 5 kids. Under the age of 3, I think.
It was a lot.
It was. And a Bible study that was supposed to take maybe 30 minutes took us 2 hours.
Oh, yeah. Someone always knew something. Eventually, we started going to school, and that was nice. So it was like, okay, great. Now preschool starts, and you guys can go.
That's right.
That was a lot. It was busy.
We would also encourage each other because we're both married to entrepreneurs. So every 2 weeks there was a different idea, and it'd be like, well, what's your husband's newest idea?
Right. How are we going to do this one? Or are we not? Do we encourage him to let this one go? So
yes. How do you encourage your entrepreneurial husband? It's a thing, and it's good to have another wife that is doing the same thing to kind of bounce that idea off. So
right.
How are you going to be doing Advent in your house this year?
Well, I loved when we did our other episode because we were able to explore so many different things that were out there. And because for my family personally, with my kids, we hadn't ever really done an Advent calendar aside from the little plush Veggie Tales scene that you make, you pull one out every day and put it up.
I don't know how you still have all of those, because every time my kids would come over to your house, they pull them all off and play with them
all over the floor. I find them at random times throughout the year. So I think I've only actually lost one, but we'll see. We'll see this year when it comes out again how many we have. So anyway, but I'm really excited. You had mentioned the Greatest Gift by Ann Voskamp, and that was one that we discussed and you showed. And I think it's actually one of our giveaways.
Yeah.
It was one of our giveaways. So I think that's the book we're going to do this year. And so we're going to try it so I can report back and tell you how it worked for our family. But I have kids of different ages and levels. And so I love the coloring pages. I love putting the ornaments on the tree that tell the whole story. And so that's the one we're going to be doing this year.
Awesome. There were so many free added facets for that. You could just read the book if that's all that you could do. But then there was downloadable ornaments and downloadable coloring pages. And a downloadable advent calendar if you wanted to put it all into an advent calendar made of paper. I felt like you could really do what you wanted with that one. So I'm excited.
So we'll get to experiment with it. Yeah. I'm excited for that part of it too. So.
Awesome. Well, we are here. We are in week 2. Well, actually we're in the middle of week 1. But we're looking forward to week 2, to the second candle of Advent. And that second candle represents peace. And at the beginning of this episode, listeners heard Isaiah 7:14 and John 14:27 read as those are 2 verses that go along with peace. I say each week that if you do research on Advent, you're going to find a lot of different verses that will work for each of the themes. And so people have the option if they like a verse, like maybe Luke 2, there's a verse about the angels coming and talking about peace. That would work this week just as well. If people have a verse they like better, then you can choose that. But we actually used these verses on our Journey of Ruth activity list calendar. Leeann came to me and said, well, I have this idea to take some of these ideas that we're finding in our research and some of the ideas that you and I have and putting them on one list for listeners. And so if you have not done that, if you have not gone and looked at the Journey of Ruth activity list, go and do that. It's free. You can download it from the website for free. And Leeann created 35 ideas of activities, Advent activities that your family can participate in. And then she created 2 calendars, one that's completely filled out and then one that's empty for you to fill out if you want to do things in a different order or whatever. And we also put on there each of the themes for the Sunday candles and then verses that can be read. So you'll see that the verses on the calendar match the verses you'll hear here on the podcast. So Leeann created that beautiful resource for you. She said, let me do this for you. And I said, okay.
I love that stuff. It's my happy place.
It is. So go and download that. But we are focusing on peace this week. So Leeann, why is peace so important for the Advent season?
Well, I did a lot of reading on this actually, because I think it's one we hear peace tossed around a lot, right? It's something everybody wants because it's calm, it's soothing, right? It's the lack of anxiety or strife or fighting. And so I think as part of the Advent season, I think it's important to qualify why this peace is important, because you mentioned before, right? True peace is found in Jesus, right? He's actually even given the name, the Prince of Peace.
Yeah.
Right. He's the ruler of it. And another verse in Ephesians says he himself is our peace. And so I think it's important to understand, to focus in as we're looking at Advent, that it's not just a lack of strife. It's not just that anxiety is gone. It's that we're actually finding our peace in Christ. And it's a couple of different ways. I was reading in this and I thought it was beautiful because it's actually 2 different things, right? Jesus coming as a person helped reconcile us to God. That is the thing that reconciled us to God, right? Yeah. We think of this newborn baby and the manger scene, right? Silent night. It's so peaceful because the baby's sleeping, right? And any of you moms know that. If you have a newborn, right, you know that. It's wow, there's no crying. I can catch a nap. Baby looks so beautiful and peaceful. And so that's, I think, what people think of when they think of, the manger scene in Christmas and Advent. But you have to remember the entire reason Jesus came wasn't just to stay a baby in a manger and to be sleeping, right? He came to reconcile us to God because we had this broken relationship with him and there was no peace. We had this discord with God because our sin was getting in the way of us truly knowing him and having a relationship with him and being with him always. And so that peace, you have to remember, is actually accomplished on the cross. that was him dying on the cross to reconcile us to God. And so you have to follow it all the way through. And I think that's what it's so important, is recognizing our true peace with God is found in the person of Jesus. And that's why we need to remember through the Advent was the coming of Christ. This was a huge deal. This was God becoming a man to accomplish this great work that he'd been sent to do. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's the peace that we need to cling to and recognize and remember. This is the Advent peace, is we have peace with God through Jesus Christ.
Mm. You know, I think it's so important, as we looked at last week being hope, and then we look at this week being peace. I think the reason why they go so well hand in hand is that if you don't have hope, it's very hard to find peace.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And if you find hope in something that is here on earth, if you find hope that is in something that will go away at some point in time, then you can never have peace, because it's kind of like, okay, when is the rug going to be ripped out from underneath me?
Exactly.
Yeah. But we know that God is eternal.
Mm-hmm. Right. And that's the whole point, is like our peace is based on something. It was an act of Christ actually to bring us peace with God. So you can't just, again, the popular idea is that you just find calmness and peace within yourself. You just find your tranquility and you find your moment. But that's so temporary, right? Mm-hmm. Like you can change the external circumstances around you, but the true peace that God wants us to engage in is peace found in the cross and peace found in Jesus. And that because of that access, we can have ongoing peace, right? Yeah. But we have to continue to come to him and recognize that no matter what the circumstances, true peace is found in that relationship, and it's ongoing and found in him. It's found in the righteousness of God. It's found in these other things that Scripture tells us. Yeah. Right. And so you have to understand, just like hope, where's your hope placed? Where's your peace found? Right. What was the cost to bring us that peace? Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, and I love that you bring up Christ being the Prince of Peace. As I was kind of looking at the different characters that we read in the Christmas story, not just the manger scene, right? Which I have heard sermons preached about, like the peace in the manger scene, because they're like, yeah, like the baby was asleep. That's great. But you've got cows and sheep. And have you ever been in a barn? It's not quiet.
Yeah, it doesn't smell great, right? Like it's dark. Like what did you have? I mean,
I know. Yeah. And so sometimes I think, we've got these beautiful gilded manger scenes, these nativity scenes. And I love them. I grew up with a mom who has, I don't even know how many nativity scenes my mom and my dad have, but
she collected them.
Mom loved them. She really did. And she put them all over the house. She had them from all countries. But so cool. One of the things that was interesting to me is, as we're going along in the story, both in Matthew and in Luke, you're seeing these different people that are being told that Jesus is coming, and that things are going to happen. So you've got Zechariah, you've got Joseph, you've got Mary, you've got the shepherds, and all of these people get to find out through angels. And the very first thing that these angels say is, do not fear.
Don't be afraid.
Yeah, don't be afraid. Yeah. And so I see that as just this reminder, like, don't be afraid, because you can't really have peace if you have fear in your life. That fear will threaten to take and remove all peace, especially if we allow the fear to kind of root in our hearts. And then every time peace tries to come over, fear just, oh, nope, get out of there, right? And so I just found it really interesting to see how God was trying to remove fear from this story in every person that he talked to, because he knew that one of the purposes of his son coming was to see peace. To see him help us as believers find peace in him, and therefore in our lives. Now we take and we look at the Bible story, and there are traditions right here on, just in culture and sometimes in our church, that we do every Christmas. Are there any that you know of, any traditions culturally or spiritually that really kind of focus on the peace of the Christmas season?
Well, one of my favorites, I was thinking about this, is the candlelight Christmas Eve service.
Yeah.
I love what it represents. One of my favorites was in a really traditional church. My dad was the choir director for a number of years.
Okay.
And so they would do the candle lighting, right, where we'd sing Silent Night just over and over again. This beautiful building. And so the idea is that the light of Christ, if you haven't been to a candlelight service, is right. The light, Jesus, the light came into the world. And then we, as we believe in him, pass the light on to each other, right? Like we receive him, and then everyone has a candle lit, right? To represent that the light now dwells within us. Well, we'd sing this over and over again. And then we would go outside the building. They had this courtyard. And so then it was like, again, symbolic of taking that light out into the world and sharing Christ with others. And so I just love the symbolism, but it was so beautiful because after you got out of the church building, there wasn't the organ and piano anymore. It was just the voices. And so it was just this calm, the air's really cold, you're outside with your candles, the song is just going on. And that to me is like the moment of, oh my gosh, he's here and he's with us, you know, and it's that peace and that calm. And so that's a tradition I really love, that I feel like embodies that peace that we're all looking for, at least for us.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the only person not feeling peace in that situation is the mother whose 5-year-old is carrying that lit candle outside.
I saw where that was going. Like, yep. And if you're holding the...
I can't tell you how many times I've seen some of our wonderful women from church, like going around cleaning off the wax off the pews when they were pews, and then chairs once they changed to that.
The chairs.
I'm like, there was a kid standing
and then
out.
making sure when they were done that all the candles were like in boxes that wouldn't light on fire, right? They weren't like cardboard boxes. So I get it. There's some prep and a little stress that can come with that because I have little kids too, and so I get that, right? It's don't burn yourselves, no hot wax in your hands, right? Like,
well, and I think we see that idea of candlelight. It's mimicked in cultures throughout the world. I mean, there are some cultures who maybe it's not candles, but it's lanterns that they light, and whether it's the lanterns, the fun ones that like float into the sky, or lanterns lit and then put onto like a body of water and then sent out. We see that candlelight. I know for our family, one of our favorite traditions every year was once we got the house decorated for Christmas, and that was a lot. My husband did not understand why I said that we would be spending the 2 days after Thanksgiving at my parents' house decorating for Christmas. He was like, 2 days. And I was like, well, day one is you take everything off every surface because you have to take that off and you put it all on the table. And then you start pulling things out of the 6 containers of Christmas decorations because every surface has a decoration that belongs on it. And then you put all of the decorations or all of the normal everyday decorations back into the box. And it was a lot. We loved it. Like our house really transformed at Christmas time. Yeah. And one day I have a dream of that happening here. I'm only up to 4 containers, but I'll get there.
You may surpass.
I may. There is no way I can do that. There were more than 6 when I helped my parents move. Goodness. Recently. So, no, but what we would do is after all of that work was done and put away, then we would go around the house and we would light every candle because Mom also really liked candles, and we would light every candle. And we didn't ever live in a house with a fireplace, or we probably would have lit that too. And we turned on Christmas music, and then we would turn down all the lights in the house, and we would just sit in the living room right before bedtime, and we would look at the tree and we would just talk and have that moment of quiet and peace. I mean, there's nothing more peaceful than sitting as a family with the lights low. Even young kids recognize this is a time to have my body be still, right? And in my opinion, it should be Bing Crosby playing on the record player.
White Christmas. Yep.
You can also do like the Mormon Tabernacle Choir or something like that, you know, but beautiful Christmas music playing. And the peace just, I don't know what it is about candlelight, but it really helps you kind of find that center in your body. So
I love what you said too. We both talked about music, right? There's so much traditional music that comes out in the holiday season every year, right? I mean, they're still writing new songs, but there's something about those old hymns and then, just the tradition of singing them every year, right? And so many of them do talk about peace and the peace in Christ, like the true focus. And I love that. We talked about, creating rhythms and traditions. That's one of them for us, at least, is the music, right?
Yeah.
Like we only sing these songs one time a year, and they really help you focus your heart, right, on like what is peace, what is hope, what is all of those things, right?
Yeah.
There's hymns that go with every one of those too. So if you're into music, you can also add that to your Advent traditions.
How can we, as we look forward to the rest of, or to week 2, really, but even the rest of Advent, peace is like we talked about before we even started. Peace is something that's really hard to find in our world, in our culture. People are trying everything they can to find peace. And how can we celebrate peace in the rest of the Advent season, in your opinion?
Well, I was reading something Annie F. Downs wrote that said, peace in God is a choice we make again and again. It's something we can choose to grab onto and wrap ourselves into. So it's a choice, right? Like we said, like the peace with God is like salvation when you come to know Jesus and that you're reconciled to God, right? But continuing to live in his peace and walk in his peace and, right, like choose faith over fear is something that's ongoing. Yeah. And so I think that's something we need to recognize too, is it's not, again, just, like I said, creating the environment, right? Turning the lights down, it's wonderful. Create that space for yourself. But it's something you have to always go back and know that this is part of growing in God, right? Is choosing that peace, is choosing to trust him when things are crazy and when there is fear and there are good, legitimate reasons to be afraid, right? A lot of those times in scripture, people had reasons to be afraid, right? When they're like, don't be afraid. But it's coming to God and recognizing, right, this peace can be accessed. It is something that he does give us freely, but we have to ask for it and we have to sit with him and we have to know where it comes from. Again, it comes from him. And so I think that's the thing. If we want to carry this over, you have to go to the source. You have to know where the source is, right? Yeah. And you have to choose it. And again, I'm saying this isn't an easy thing, right? This is walking with Christ, being discipled is something that's a day-to-day thing. Yeah. It's something you can make a choice every day to say, I'm going to choose to live in what you said. I'm going to believe in who you are. I'm going to believe you are the Prince of Peace, and I'm going to ask for the strength and the ability to access that. So
I like that idea of choosing, like even in that quote that you talked about, that it's about choosing joy, or not joy, choosing peace. And not looking for somebody else to give it to us or something else to provide it for us, but it's something that we have to choose. We're both moms, and peace in a household of children, young children, is not always something. No, it's just not a thing. No. I want to know. So we've been memorizing the fruit of the Spirit with my boys, and I found it actually to be a pretty good tool to use when we're having discussions about their actions or their responses, because we'll talk about, let's go through the fruit of the Spirit. Which one of the fruit of the Spirit did that not look like? Well, it didn't. I hit my brother, and that doesn't look like love. Okay, so we need to love our brother, right? And I'd love to tell you that was my total plan and that was my goal, but it wasn't. I just thought this is a good verse for my kids to memorize. And then we memorized it, and I was like, oh, are you choosing joy right now? And my youngest will go, love, joy. No, mommy, I'm not. Right. And I'm like, and he has to and then if I'll say, are you choosing gentleness? He has to go through all of the fruit of the Spirit and get to gentleness. Right. And then go,
the ABCs.
Right. Seriously. Yeah. It is really like that. So how can we help our kids to understand peace starting in the season and then maybe see that roll over into our life the rest of the year?
Well, I think, again, it starts with you, right? Like if you're spun up and anxious and angry and they're watching you run from one thing to the next, and you haven't put like some good boundaries around your time and around, what you're choosing to do in this holiday season, they pick up on that. Kids are really intuitive. And so sometimes, unfortunately, right, like as a parent, that's like a good like litmus test of how am I doing as a parent, right? If my kids are all spun up and anxious and angry and crazy and all over the place, I might need to stop and take a look at my own self.
Yeah.
And go, okay, what am I doing right now? Like, am I modeling this for them, or am I just yelling at them like, be more, be more peaceful, stop, like,
be peaceful. I want peace in this home.
Right. But I can't teach something that I'm not doing myself. Right. It's just one of those glaring things that comes back at you as parents over and over again. Is it's like, I cannot teach out of something I don't have and I don't practice. So, it's good to kind of, again, get yourself refocused on those things. And I love what you said about looking at those verses, because I love the fruits of the spirit is such a cool thing, because they contrast where are you sowing to, right? Because that's like it's a cultivating term when you talk about like you sow what you reap, right? And so if you're cultivating the ground and you're creating a place where you're inviting God into those moments and you're praying over your kids and you're asking for the strength, and you're like, I don't have any today. I don't have any faith today. I don't have anything today. I'm just tired and worn out and stressed out, and inviting them into those moments and saying, I need you today. I need you to come meet me in this place and give me the strength to do this, and give me the words, and give me the, the peace that I need to model to my children. Again, what are you cultivating? Because that's what's going to grow, right? You can water the plant, you can make sure it's getting sunshine, but you cannot make it grow fruit. Those fruit come from spending time with God, from taking things out, right? If you've got things in the way, they're getting in the way of the love, joy, peace, right? Maybe we're harboring bitterness. Maybe we're, those things that are going to get in the way. Taking things off, putting things on, right? I think that's one of the big ways to accomplish that growth.
Yeah.
Is cultivate and tend your own trees, your own spiritual life.
Yeah.
Life in general.
As I was thinking about peace, another thing that came to mind with whether you're single, married, have kids, is understanding where your family's boundaries are during the holidays. And I think sometimes because we have, maybe not during like the COVID years, because everything was canceled, right? Nobody was getting together, blah, blah, blah. And now it seems like this year, maybe everyone feels a little more comfortable having a Christmas party, and it depends on who you talk to, but having a Christmas party, whether it's small or big, some churches and schools are back to having their Christmas programs and that type of stuff.
Yeah.
It can be really easy to just pack our schedule full to the brim with fun Christmas stuff. And we talked about this with the Advent family activities. We said, please don't just do this to fill your time, because this is not just an extra thing to add to an already busy schedule. That is not what Advent or Christmas is about. And so I think it's really helpful to know where your family's boundaries are and to not push back to that. That it's okay to say no to that friend who's having a Christmas party because you've got 2 other Christmas parties that week, and you just can't give that time this week. Or
well, and I said about, I'll give the nod to this because I think it's true, right? That peace that follows you everywhere, right? Doesn't matter the environment, but the environment does help, right? We're creatures that live in this world, and we have relationships, and we have different things that can create more anxiety or more peace, correct? Right? And exactly what you're saying. You can't say yes to everything, right? If you're finding yourself feeling completely stressed and tapped out, maybe you're right. Maybe you do need to say yes to the best things, pick 3 or 4 big events or whatever you want to do, and just say no to the rest. And that's okay. Right. Again, like that's the other thing is I feel like people put so much expectation on this season sometimes, like, well, it's Christmas and we have to do all these things and because it's so fun and we can't disappoint people. And so I think part of like, again, do yourself a favor with that part of peace as well. And just take a step back for a minute and say, okay, right, is this going to make this fun and enjoyable and help us focus on the reason for the season and connect with people? Or is it just going to be way more stress? Because if it's not stress, like, it's okay to let some of that go. It's A-okay.
Well, and I
And you're
think we're going to
like,
talk about gifts when we talk about, in a couple weeks, when we talk about love. But
mhm,
gifting is another way that I think it's hard sometimes to, or it's easy to allow something to get in the way of our peace, because we
mhm,
feel like we are scrambling around trying to find the right gift, or how am I ever going to afford? And so
mhm,
the gifts that I want to give people, or they're expecting. And I know for me, I'm a huge gifter. Like, I love to
mhm,
give gifts. I love to think about the gifts several months in advance. Like, this is something I get from my grandma. I am listening to what you're saying, and I
mhm,
might even be making a note in my phone. I have notes for a couple people of like, hey, at Christmas time,
mhm,
this is what you're going to get them.
mhm,
And it's because they've said this would be really nice to have. And I'm like, ooh, I could get that for you. Right. But
mhm,
I know, especially in the early parts of our marriage, we didn't have the money to get these gifts that I
mhm,
wanted. And so I had to get really creative, and I had to learn to be okay with our budget and what we could give people, and to
mhm,
not let that be like a point of anxiety or anxiousness like in my life, but instead to have
mhm.
peace and to know it doesn't really matter. Right? Like,
Right.
these people that I'm gifting anyway are my friends and my family. It's not like they're going to go, yeah, this friendship that we've had for 10 years, yeah, it's done. It, it's not going to happen,
Right.
right? So,
Right.
and it's also not worth going into debt because you want to keep up with the Joneses.
Right.
Yeah.
And I love that there's peace in planning, right? There is, because that's
I
the other
don't like
part that
that.
can
I don't
get,
like that at all.
oh, but it's a thing.
I know it's a thing, but
I
you
know
know
you
that
don't.
planning for me is like
I
not,
know, but
yeah.
even if it's a simple plan of we're only going to spend this much this
Yeah,
year,
that's
like
true.
you're talking about gifts, right? Like,
Yeah,
you just make those benchmarks for yourself and then don't cross them, and that also brings a lot of peace, because then you're not dealing with the regret or the
true.
guilt, right? Of
Yeah.
like, I spent too much money, or I didn't really have that time, or I'm exhausted because I went to too many parties this weekend, or like, so just literally just making a plan and sticking with it, right? I think
Yeah.
you're going to find, in a very practical sense, that will also help bring peace to your Christmas season.
Your Christmas season and to your New Year, because then you're not getting like a
Yes,
credit card bill in January and
exactly.
regretting Christmas and paying for Christmas in December, right? You're
Right.
right. The planning
Yeah.
brings peace. Please don't like give me a sign that says that for Christmas.
You wouldn't hang it up. It would it would go in the closet, and you'd be like, I hate that sign. Why did you give me that sign?
Probably. I should
I
probably
know you
actually
well enough.
get a tattoo of that so that it reminds me that, Courtney, you need to be planning more. There is peace in the planning. Oh, okay, well, uh,
Oh,
um,
you know a guy.
I do know a guy.
You
For
do
those
know a
who
guy.
don't know, my brother's a tattoo artist. So
Yeah.
if I was to ever get a tattoo, I know where I'd get it. Um,
Uh-huh.
so I think that it's so important for us to remember that peace is something that's meant to be a huge part of this Advent season. And it's something that we've talked about it over and over again today. Culture wants to take away from us if we will allow it. But I love what you said about choosing peace and how that is a
Mhm.
choice in our life. So thank you for that. Uh,
Mhm.
a couple weeks ago, I asked you the question that we always ask, which is,
Mhm.
we're not meant to live life alone. And so who helped you on your journey? And you told us that answer. So I'm going to actually
Mhm.
change the question today. So Leeann is one who loves discipleship as much as I do. And so
Mhm.
she does discipleship a lot in her life. So I want to ask you, what is your favorite way that you get to disciple others?
So I love having people in my home. I feel
Mm,
like a lot of discipleship is accomplished just in the day to day. It's like, as I'm following Christ, right? You follow me. Let me show you how Jesus works into our day to day life. And so I love having people over just to do really easy things like dinner, right? Come over and eat. Come play with my kids. Come, help me fold laundry. Come help me do, just again, day to day things that I'm doing, right? I'm learning how to follow Jesus as I'm being a stay at home mom, and this is my journey. And I find that when we're just kind of doing things like that, it kind of opens up conversations, like spiritual elements because, again, we're holistic beings, right? There's all these things are connected. And so there's all the activity is worship, right? Everything that I'm doing and learning, it's going to come out. And so I think that's my favorite way to do discipleship. Again, I also love to teach. I've mentioned that. And so sitting down doing like small group Bible study is also wonderful. I feel like through lots of discussion and through opening the Word of God together and praying for each other, that in a small group setting is so helpful, because I think that is really how the body of Christ is designed. Honestly, I think that's a place where we all come together and we're sharing our different pieces of the journey, and we can encourage each other so much, or provide a place for confession, or provide a place for healing. And so again, just hospitality is also one of my spiritual gifts. And so that's, again, the way that I do that. I open up my home and invite people in to come do life with us.
Okay, you mentioned inviting people to come and fold your laundry. That means you're like inviting them into your mess.
It is my mess. I mean, I will tell you, we've had some college girls come live with us for a time, like over the summer or between semesters or things like that. And so literally when you're in my house and you have nothing else to do, it's like, hey, come do this thing with me, right? It is. So there's no hiding from that. When you have people live with you like that, they do see you. They see all of it. They see when the kids get sick, and they see when things aren't going so well, or when you have a fight with your spouse, or it's all there.
Yeah.
But then then they see all of it. They see the reconciliation. They see how we clean up the mess. They see, that the moments of grace where you help the kids work out their problems. And so it is messy, but again, that's the beauty of the grace of Christ, is that He meets us in our mess. And that's where it's real and authentic, is not when you're trying to cover it up, but when you're being real about it. And so.
What do you mean? We never cover up the dirty or the messy spots in our life. Yeah. Well, if people have heard you on this episode and on episode 82, and they have a question for you, how can they contact you?
You can email me. I am not big into social media right now. I'll be real honest. It feels like a time suck. And so I've got other things I need to be doing. So,
priorities. There it is.
They just, that's one of the ones I had to let go. So it's not, everybody's different, but that was one I had to let go. So you're welcome to email me, Courtney. I'll have my email address on there. And I'd love any questions you have about discipleship, about this episode, about any of that. I'd love to hear from you, pray for you, whatever you need. So. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I will have Leeann's email address on the show notes on the website, journeyruth.com. And thank you, Leeann, for joining me again, and for putting on more of your teacher hat today, and teaching us about peace and how we can find it in the Advent season. I'm really glad to have you here today.
Thank you. Glad to be here.